Hey, welcome back to the channel. All right, it's time for the March 2024 update for Battlegrounds. This is a general tier list. I want to make a couple things very clear, and we will get into this. Also, spreadsheet will be linked in the description, and a screenshot size will be created specifically by none other than Misty K, and I will put that live on my Twitter feed, I don't know, in about a week or something like that or so, because I know that that is really helpful to people. I do think it'd be a good idea, though, even with all that being said, go ahead and pay attention to this because we always give out a lot of nuggets of information, you know, how metas and things like that are evolving. Now, this is a general tier list. I've been using this since we've been doing this since before Battlegrounds officially even came into the game, being CCP and got to test it out. I've been using it to help guide me through my rank ups because, you know, we don't know what the meta is exactly going to throw at us, but we know that there are champions who are consistently good as dual threats, attackers, or defenders. And I want to make this abundantly clear right now. All of them are important. We have done our best to rank the champions where we think they will be most highly ranked. That's why you won't see a long shot as an attacker, a defender, and as a dual threat, because we feel like his most value, where we could rank him the most, assign him the best rating, was in the tier above all. Now we'll go ahead and talk about all the new champions or any champions that have been promoted or demoted and any changes I see in the meta. So this is intended to help you guide your rank ups over time. And then that way, when the actual Battlegrounds meta comes out for that season, you maybe only have one or two champions, some rank 4s you want to do, rank 5s, maybe some ascensions. Who knows where you're exactly at and where you're competing. But all of these champions are important and are great to have on the ready to go. I've been using it myself, and you see how well I have been doing. So here we go. In the tier above all, dual threats. Now, I do still like to start with dual threats myself because they allow me some flexibility on those initial draft or two. Here we are. I want to talk about Doom and Rintra. And I know some of you are like, well, why? What do they have in common? Well, I will be totally honest and forthright. And I know some of you are like, no, I still use them. And you do. And that's why they're still in the tier above all. But the higher up you go, the higher up in the range, you're just not seeing them as much. And it's not their fault. In fact, if they do get demoted, and that's the only reason I'm calling this out, is because I could see it happening in the next month or two, they will get that heart emoji, which means it's not their fault. They're almost too good. We've seen so many science attacks. Science is incredibly strong right now, particularly offensively. And so many of them have a sunder, they have like extra crit, or they have extra sources of damage. They play into and almost make Doom and Rincha work against themselves by making them throw special after special, right? With like power stings, think about Cassie Lang, but even more your spider hams and things like that. And these are champions that are also often in decks. That's why these rankings and tier lists, me and myself, the Illuminati, right? You see all them all there. Go support them. They share their knowledge. And we talk about it's not just how strong these champions are in a vacuum. It's what modes are being used and how they're being used and what they're being asked. And right now, yes, Doom and Rinter are still good defenders in a vacuum. They're very powerful. They're very good. But there are so many science champions in those decks. And additionally, there are becoming less and less times where you can use them effectively offensively and then also beat or come out with a higher score than your opponent is using in those same matchups. I just want to call it out. I'm not saying they're dead. I'm not saying they're done. I'm saying they are on what appears to maybe be the back half of their career. They're also only 6 stars, and it's getting really difficult for 6 stars to punch up if they aren't ascended. And I will always reflect that for you in these monthly tier lists that we do. Moving on, the only other champion that we're going to talk about that's in the tier above all for dual threats is Guardian. Some folks know Guardian is great. And some of you are like, I already knew that, Vega. Thank you for telling me. Well, you got that relic. It is the Hulkbuster relic. Also, within the next few days of me recording this, I am recording this on Friday, the 1st of March. Within a week, I will be putting out a rank 2 Guardian in Battlegrounds video. I was aware he would be good. I've seen others, like Trappy has done a really impressive video. I was shocked at how well I was able to pull off some of these fights, playing him in a meta that was very, very difficult. This last meta in the Gladiator circuit, I'm very excited to get that out. He's a champion I absolutely love, and this is a good example of sometimes in this mode, being Battlegrounds, a champion like Guardian is able to just shine. They're very good at questing. You don't often see them assigned too much in war because there's often an attacker who is more specifically tailored to those nodes and those fights and those defenders. But he's a good defender, right? If he can't be nullified or armor broken, which sometimes can happen. But then he can also take these incredibly difficult meta defenders and handle them like a boss. And that is a lot of what your deck construction is about when you want to be efficient in your wins. I hit Mysterium, I think it was 2 or 3 this last season. And honestly, I just played when I felt like it. I just played for fun. I got on, I played, and I came out like in the top 700 players in the world. I have a good deck. I've put my resources there, and then I was able to come out with a result that made me extremely happy for the amount of time I have put in. Guardian was a huge part of that. All right, let's go ahead and we'll move a little more quickly as we talk about the rest of these dual threats. Moving into the next of the rest of the dual threats, these are top shelf. These are still really good. And a lot of times metas are going to make them like phenomenal or great, or let's just say you don't have them all ranked over. Maybe this is a champion you just enjoy. Stick them in there. You're going to do some really great things with them. I know I have. Mysterio is often in my deck. I have him at rank 2. I enjoy using him. He's a really problematic defender. Also can be turned around and used against Domino, which we're always looking for Domino counters. So moving through, we're going to talk about the champions that have the microphones. Overseer has recently been demoted. And yes, I now have changed his rating on my general tier list, which hopefully you check out every month. We continue to update, and that's the kind of nuance that we're putting in there. And you can configure that tier list for yourself. But we demoted him because even me with a rank 2, I love Overseer. He is a good defender. He is a good attacker, but he's just not being used as much, being asked as much. If I'm going to be putting in some science dual threats, it's going to be Scorpion, Photon, Spider-Ham, and Joe Fixit. It just is, unless there's something very specific about the meta that's asking me to put in some other ones. So that's where he's at. Still very good, but I did want you to recognize, and this is the kind of stuff that we talk about, we moved him down. I think that's where he's going to be. I think he's going to be there for quite a while. Could see him moving to defender or attacker, but honestly, he's pretty good in both. Still a phenomenal question champion, great war champion, and still very good in Battlegrounds, but I did need to reflect that as people look at this to start helping them make some rank up decisions. The other changes or new champions we have is Mutant. Now, Nightcrawler, his buff is not live at the time of me making this. And no, I have not played it yet. So this is definitely a prognostication. This is why he's got that dice emoji, right? It's early. Be careful. Make sure you play them yourself. This is my prediction. I had already thought about ranking up my 6-star Nightcrawler when Jackson and Mike were talking about people wanting the 7-star Nightcrawler. Like, hello, I was one of them. And now he's getting buffed. He looks to me, and they made it so you could switch him faster. He's got those instant bleeds, I believe they are, and it looks like with those prowess, he might be able to really get some damage going. Also, defensively, you know, especially if they change the Nightcrawler fix, that or the Nightcrawler switch where you just kind of hit the light in the air and he pauses, that keeps coming back in, and it's been out of the game for what feels like years. If that comes back out, he's going to become more problematic. I've been talking about how I think Evade is becoming back more and more in our game. So you're going to need champions, and it cannot be, you can't be your skill slow champions, right? Because class disadvantage will not work. I want to see it. I'm not positive on this one, but this is my prognostication. This is where I think he's going to end up. If you're watching this and you have a Nightcrawler, let me know. How's he performing for you offensively, and how's he been doing for you defensively? And then our first new champion, we're going to go with Dust. I'm curious about Dust. If I give my full true prognostication, she's either going to stay right here as a kind of a top shelf dual threat, because she does often ask for a defensive ask, right? I think it's you want to put the Incinerate or the Plasma, I can't remember at the top of my head right now, to slow down her Sandstorm buildup, meaning she's often asking you to have a counter when you attack her and she's the defender. I don't know how fast she's going to be offensively. I don't see her punching up and still getting fast enough scores to really help you push those boundaries, really push your rankings. But I think if you enjoy playing Dust and you want to use her as a dual threat champion, meaning someone who you draft early and you can use them offensively or defensively, depending on what your opponent does, I think that's going to fit with her. I think the worst case scenario, she comes off a dual threat because people have learned to fight her and they often have counters in their decks, and she becomes a very good attacker. Now, if we find that she can punch up, and what I mean by punching up is she can punch up in a rank, right? Like you could take an ascended 6-star rank 5, maybe take out 7-star rank 2s or even your rank 3s or something like that, and you can do it reasonably fast. If we find out she can do that, maybe she will move to like the tier above all, the highest tier in attackers. But right now, this is where I see her. I think she's going to be kind of your second tier dual threat, really good champion. She's got all those immunities, maybe in metas where it's not a pure nuke meta, but maybe something's being thrown at us with those immunities or something that she brings to the table can really help push her up a lot. And that's where you get into this too. And then we'll move on. There's no other changes in the dual threat top shelf. Moving on to the tier above all attackers. Now, you want these champions because they're good and they're going to typically be good in your nuke metas, and they're going to be typically good and help you handle. They're going to be resilient and help you handle the non-nuke metas too. I'm very happy I have a lot of them ranked up. It's been extremely helpful to me over time. The one promotion and the champion that we're really going to talk about as I leave this up here is going to be Kushala. Now, she initially came in as a top shelf attacker, and I felt comfortable with that. I try to start off conservative with my initial placements and things like that. And also, I knew that I was very biased or motivated to have her be good, right? I mean, I got to help with the design process with my good friend DLL on this. He did 99.9% of the work, so let's not confuse things or kid ourselves. But I knew that she had potential as a Battlegrounds nuke, and I knew that was like kind of some of the design goal there for him. And he's really good at what he does. She has been absolutely phenomenal. I've been pushing out Kushala content, and I know a lot of you are finally starting to get her from that Titan crystal, and she's going to enter that 6-star featured crystal. I've got the essentials video on like how to play her. I've shown her in Alliance War taking extremely difficult fights, using her dual immunities, using just her soul barb or just her nullify, and I've also shown her taking out solos in some pretty tough fights in Necropolis. Well, I'm going to show her to you in Battlegrounds. She is fantastic, and the really good reason, or the really great reason why she has been, in my mind, without a doubt, moved into the tier above all in Battlegrounds, is she can take meta defenders. And the perfect example is, I've got my dual threats, my opponent drafts a Hulkling, I'm like, cool, my Kushala comes up, and I'm going to use my Kushala to absolutely destroy that Hulkling. Then my opponent gets a Korg, and I'm like, cool. My Kushala will take that Korg instead. I'm going to show you these fights. She's fantastic. She is phenomenal. You do have to play her well. There's a skill ask for sure. But if you play her well, she's going to do that, take out champions like that, and take out Maestros too for you. So she's fantastic. And then you can see across the board, the rest of these champions, they make a lot of sense. The only one I'm curious about is Vision. I just don't see that much of her, but I think that's because she has an absurdly high skill ask. She can do so much. But if you don't play her well, if you make a mistake, you're going to get absolutely punished. But in Battlegrounds, it feels like that doesn't matter as much because you're looking for that almost near perfection fight. Otherwise, your opponent's probably going to get it, and it's A-okay. So that kind of high risk, high reward fight kind of really seems to fit with Viv. But if you have experience with her and you feel otherwise, please let me know. All right, let's go ahead and move to the top shelf and super premium of attackers. Okay, moving on to the top shelf and super premium of attackers. This is similar to the dual threats kind of ideal. Like maybe not as usable, maybe not as valuable, but if you play them well and they work for you, use them, you're going to get great results. Or maybe it's a certain meta that's going to push them up. These metas that we see not as regularly, but they do happen, right? Let's not kid ourselves. So moving on, we'll talk about the champions that have changed. There's a few more to talk about in this. We'll start with the top shelf. Wiccan. This really was the spreadsheet wizards, the Adams, who were like, hey, I think you should check out Wiccan. We're seeing him used more in Battlegrounds. We're seeing him used a little bit more in War, especially in relation to War. You have some other champions ranked. Took that to the Illuminati, and they're like, yeah, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. And especially if you have that 7-star Wiccan, I think it was Na and Aiden, Egatron, who brought it up. They're like, honestly, 7-star Wiccan, if he can get enough health, can become a bit of an annoyance. It's not like a shutdown, strongest defender in the game, but if the opponent doesn't have a good option, can be used as a really nice, powerful neutral eye. Obviously good for Hulklings. It made a lot of sense. We reviewed it, moved him up right there. Want to reflect that and call that out, that is a promotion that kind of just happened due to none other than error. This is the kind of constructive criticism I absolutely love. If you make it, you're constructive with it, take a look at it. Not perfect, and I want to get as best of information out to you, the viewer, as absolutely possible. So it was a great job. Thank you to the Spreadsheet Wizards and, of course, the Illuminati for helping kind of correct a mistake on my part, in my opinion. So moving on into the science tier, we're going to have a champion who's going to be buffed. I think in like 4 days from me recording this. I have covered the Luke Cage buff. It looks like exactly what was live on the CCP beta is going to go live in game. So I'll be removing the beta from the thumbnail and the title of that. He is I love that buff. Another DLL knocking it out of the park. The guy knows what he's doing. I do not think Luke is designed to be a Battlegrounds nuke. He also doesn't appear to have a lot of power as a defender, so I couldn't really justify putting him in the defender dual threats or the defenders. I've placed him here in super premium for now, but I really do have my eye on him because when I was playing him, when I did the video, and you go and watch the video, I think you'll see, I was like, I think we might have a little bit of a Battlegrounds champion here, especially if you're not, if you're lacking some of these other science nukes. I could really see that happening. I think he's definitely going to be good in war. I think he's going to be very good in questing. I want to see where he comes out in Battlegrounds. And like I said, I often start off very conservative with these things, especially if it's a DLL champion or a character that I know I'm motivated to like, because I mean, he's one of my friends. I am aware I might be biased. I don't want to place them too high. So I'm starting him off here, but I really do believe we're going to see him promoted to the top shelf in the next 3 or 4 months as people get their hands on him, rank him, and use him in Battlegrounds. Okay, moving on through. The next champion we'll talk about is the next new champion in the game. We had Dust. Now we're at Ironheart. I really like Ironheart a lot. Was really technically only available as a 6-star. I mean, I guess there's the 7-star, but not that many people have her. But I think as we get our 7 stars, I think you're going to see her used more and more and more. Really phenomenal miss counter, just like Evade is present in our game. So is Miss. She has a nice suite of immunities, and this is something that's huge in Battlegrounds, and I could see it being a big deal. Her ability to pick her damage source. Awesome. Now, she doesn't have 3 options like Scorpion has, so I don't have her at the highest tier, because I also think she's not slow. She's slower than your Battlegrounds, pure Battlegrounds nukes, okay? She doesn't have 3 sources of attack. She has 2. I have a feeling it's going to be enough. I don't think we're going to see her promoted to that highest top tier, but ranking up your top shelf champions makes a ton of sense. I know I definitely do it. And then when the meta is great for them, you bring them in. I know some people felt like she might have been a slightly difficult attacker. I think defender, I think more that's due to her just being new, her animations being new. I really don't think in the next couple of months, we're going to be talking about Ironheart being a troublesome defender. But I think an excellent miscounter. I think solid damage that ramps up with a couple SB1s into the SB2. So once you learn how to kind of make sure you're measuring her damage source properly, if you watch the video I did on her too, or actually I think we streamed her, the 1 into the 2, you really want to make sure you've got that right. Nice set of immunities. I think there's something there. So keep our eye on her. And then that is it for the attackers. Let's go ahead and quickly talk about the defenders. All right, as we talk about the defenders, there's really no changes. You can see the tier above all. It's weighted into the Mystics. Mystic Dispersion, big deal. We've talked about at length over the time doing these videos. Science attackers thing, it's not really his fault. There's just so many counters to him now, but he's still a good defender. I know I sometimes really get tripped up. My opponent will place him, and I just don't have a good counter on hands, and he's obviously phenomenal in those scenarios. And then skill. Skill feels like where they've really been putting out those defenders of late, right? Bullseye, Atuma, can cause some real problems. Killmonger is a classic defender. The Battlegrounds feels very similar to Guardian. It's just really giving him a place to shine in the core. Korg is like the classic defender, massive health pool, has that shrug. The 7 stars are kind of annoying because we got so used to fighting the 6 stars where you just assumed they were going to shrug, and the 7 star doesn't always do it because of the lower sig. Then we've got Maestro. Maestro is causing problems, someone that you want to have answers for. People using like Kate Bishops. I use my Kushala all the time. I used my Mojo, didn't come out with a phenomenal score, but it was good enough to get me the win. So he's a problem. He's definitely a problem. And then you can see all the top shelf defenders as well. Make sure you remember defenders, attackers, dual threats, all just as important to each other. This is just where we have them, in the tier list, but this is not intended to mean that defenders are not as important as attackers and are not as important as dual threats. They absolutely most definitely are. And when you construct your deck, you do want to have a nice mixture of all of them because you want to cause as many problems for your opponent as they can cause for you. Thank you so much for watching. As always, let me know what you think we got right. Let me know what you think we got wrong. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.